Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So I get a lot of questions about creative financing and sub 2. I'm going to give you a basic outline, but I had a question about it just today, and it was more about lease options. So I'm going to go through what creative financing is. It usually means that the seller is going to sell to you in a creative way. So in my opinion, there are 3 main items in that tool belt, and then there's one on another way that's also creative financing. So one of the big items you're going to hear about is subject to. So subject to means you buy a property subject to the first lien, so the mortgage stays in place. This usually works if the owner is late on his mortgage and you're going to get him current, and then you are going to rent the property and have enough cash flow coming to cover that payment, plus positive cash flow. In that case, it's a good deal. Okay. Sometimes. But it hardly ever works in New York, and I would say if you try it in New York, you are almost always going to be cruising for a bruising because of 2 major problems in New York. The first is title companies in New York, and the second is sellers being represented by attorneys. So let's take each of those separately. Title companies in New York do not run the transaction. I get asked all the time, well, do you have an investor-friendly title company? That is clearly from someone who saw somebody on the internet who doesn't do business in New York. There's no such thing as an investor-friendly title company in New York. Every title company is just as investor-friendly as the others. Because in 49 states, the title company really is the entity that manages the transaction, that disperses the funds. They really do everything. They also offer title insurance. In New York, an attorney is going to manage the transaction and disperse the funds. And I realize I didn't give a title to this. The title to this should be creative financing in New York. Okay, so the title company in New York really only does 2 things. They are basic service providers. They make sure all the liens are paid off, which makes subject to almost impossible, and they make sure all the taxes are paid off. That's it. That's all they do. So to go to a title company in New York and say, hey, I just want to keep this lien on in place, they're going to say there's a due on sale clause and we can't. Now, there are people, and Pace Morby has a great sub 2 crew, and it's a good system, and it works in 49 states. I don't believe it works in New York very well, but he has ways around this due on sale clause. Here's the truth. The truth is, when you take a loan, it says it's due on sale. If you sell the property, you got to pay off the loan. So guys like Pace and who do sub 2, and sub 2 is not a bad thing, are never going to tell you how to get around the legality of the subject to clause. They're going to tell you how to avoid getting caught by the lender to know that it was sold. So you have a title company problem. You have a bigger problem in New York is an attorney problem. The sellers are usually represented by an attorney, and I think that any attorney that would agree to represent his client in a subject to case where someone is going to buy a property and the seller is going to have a loan that's still on their credit, I think that if the end buyer ended up not making payments, which is not a good thing and doesn't happen often, but it could, then I think that attorney would be subject to a malpractice suit, that he advised his client to do it, or he didn't tell his client not to do it. So I think it's almost impossible to do sub 2 in New York because of the title companies and the attorney issues. I don't want to say anything's impossible. If you have somebody who doesn't want an attorney and you find a title company that'll do it, great, more power to you. But it's very, very hard. The other thing that is creative financing is seller financing, where a seller is going to finance a property to you. That works in New York just fine. Right? In fact, that's amazing in New York, because being the bank of New York is not something you want to do. Foreclosures in New York can take 10 to 14 years. I say that to people and they don't believe me, but it's true. So you don't want to be the bank. So that's another, let's say, tool in the tool belt of creative financing, where you're the bank, right? If you want to sell the property to somebody and have him pay you over time, that is not something I would recommend to do in New York, because being the bank in New York, as I just said, due to the incredible length of time it takes to foreclose, is not something you want to do. The other tool in the tool belt of creative financing is lease options. Now, lease options absolutely 1000% can work in New York. The logistics of them are complicated, though. There was a period of time where I said I want to do lease options. I got into a bunch of scenarios with sellers, and what I found is that on most of these, the numbers didn't work, right? So let's talk about the reality of New York, in that we have much more expensive homes and we have much more expensive taxes, right? It's very common in my area to have taxes of $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. I've done many properties with more. In fact, I'm buying a property now there's $20,000 a year in taxes, and that's not outrageous for that area. So because of those numbers, it usually screws up how create a lease option can work. Because remember, in a lease option, you have to, so there's a lot of different lease option strategies, right? You can lease option it from the seller, and then you can wholesale the lease option. You can sell it to somebody else who will take it, but the numbers have to work. Or you can sandwich lease option, where you're lease optioning from the seller and you're lease option to a tenant buyer. And basically, lease option means you're renting the property, and you have an option to buy it. So let's take a typical situation that could work. A seller says, "Hey, I want $400,000. You say, "Oh, I can give you $360, but I can't pay you all at once. I'm going to pay you over time with an option to pay you $360 within 3 years, let's just say, and I'm going to give you $2,000 a month." Let's just throw numbers out there. And then you find a tenant buyer, and you say, "I'm going to sell it to you for $400, and you can pay me over 3 years. You'll pay me $3,000 a month. So there's $1,000 in extra cash flow, and then you get an extra $40,000 if he comes through." It's fine. It can work. The problem is that because the numbers here are so high, right? You're buying properties usually not for $300,000, for $400,000 or $500,000, and because you have $1,000 or $1,500 a month in taxes, that the numbers that people will pay in rent, very often you're not going to be cash flow positive on your payment to the seller. That's what I had. I had a situation where I needed a $4,000 a month payment, and no one was paying $4,000 a month in rent. So it didn't work. I had that a couple of times where the numbers just were too tight. Maybe I could hope to rent it and make $100 a month cash flow. That's not a good situation to be in. So you don't want to get into a situation that doesn't make sense. The numbers have to work, and it's harder for the numbers to work in New York. It doesn't mean you can't do lease options, either sandwich lease options where you're in the middle and you're lease optioning from the seller and then lease optioning to a tenant buyer, or even wholesaling lease option, but the numbers have to work. And because of where rents are, even though rents have gone up, very often they're still not where they need to be. And in general, I don't have really an option. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Peninsula Boulevard by Hempstead Lake Park is not a good place for me. Verizon's got to put another cell tower there. So, in general, when I buy a single-family home, I don't have the option to rent it out. Right? People say, "Oh, I want to buy rentals." The rentals here don't work because you're not cash flow positive due to the high cost. The debt service is high, and your taxes are high, and it usually doesn't make sense. So it's harder to make lease option numbers work in New York due to the relationship of how much rent is versus how much the properties sell for. But having said that, it absolutely can work here. It's perfectly legal. It's not a problem, and you're not going to have an issue from an attorney. I think it makes sense, but it's hard to make the numbers work. Harder to make the numbers work here than in other places. So that's my thoughts on creative finance. I tried it. I didn't have success in it, but I didn't really try it hard enough. I think sub 2 is as close to impossible as could be. If a seller wants to finance to you and be the bank, jump on it. It's awesome. Don't ever be the bank and seller finance it out. That's a huge mistake in New York. And those are really the tools of creative finance that I know about. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in finding out more about one-on-one coaching I offer, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help my SEO, my search engine optimization. A lot more people have been seeing my videos because of the likes, so please click the thumbs up. And I post 5 times a week. I don't always know what to say, so please keep the comments coming. This came from a comment. I forgot who it's from, but thank you. I try to get to my comments within a couple of days. You can ask any question. Does not have to be about the video you're watching. Please keep the comments coming. If it's a simple comment, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something that I've covered before, I will. This came from a guy who I sent 3 or 4 videos on creative financing, but he wanted more explanation, so I did. And if something new, I'll do a new video on it. So I really, really appreciate you watching. Please keep the comments coming. Thank you very, very much.